Good evening and welcome to episode 81 of Mystery, Murder, and Mayhem. I hope your week and your weekend was awesome. And I have to say, our weekend, it was pretty good. Saturday morning, I got up and I decided to do some door dashing. So I had my youngest son, Nick, with me. And a lot of times when I'm not getting these back-to-back orders, which I prefer, but anyway, it's going to happen. I sit in the Walmart parking lot and I do a little people watching. But on Saturday, me and Nick were sitting there and I was like, well, let's ride around a little bit. So we ride around in the area and I guess the universe had just been telling me, hey, you need to go do this because we found a little puppy that had to have been abandoned because where he was at, there was just no way that he wandered there by himself because he's just so little. Now, he's been scanned. I took him over to the vet's office that Courtney and Alex work in, and he has no chip. But anyway, today he got his first puppy shots and he got a flea treatment and he's been dewormed. And we named him Philip. He looks like he's a corgi mixed with maybe some chihuahua, but he is adorable. And if you follow us on Facebook, I posted a picture of him on Saturday. But anyway, Ariel's a big sister now, and she kind of likes him. She'll get used to him. She's not too hateful or anything, but she's an old girl. So she was the only doggy, and now she's got a little brother. But anyway, so as you may recall, last week I brought you the first part of the Days of Our Murdaughs, and today I'm bringing you part 2. Now, here's a recap of what we talked about last week. So Alex's son, Paul, he was charged with several felonies that stemmed from the boat accident that happened while he was under the influence of alcohol. A 19-year-old girl named Mallory Beach, now that's the same age that Paul was when this happened, she was killed in that boat accident. Alex's wife, Maggie, she started looking into their financial assets after a check that she had written at this charity luncheon and bounced. Then all of a sudden, Alex is calling 911 saying that he had found his wife and son dead out by his dog kennels. And we knew that 6 weeks before she and Paul were found dead, she had talked to a divorce attorney. Well, somewhere in the investigation of Maggie's and Paul's death, information, which we don't know what that information was, but anyway, information was found that has put a link to the Murdaugh family to what is being called a hit and run death of Stephen Smith. So that brings us up to date of what we talked about last week. So let's get started with this week's exciting part of the Murdaugh saga.
When you got here, it could be a nightmare. But for the victim, it is realized. Welcome to Mystery, Murder, and Mayhem. Listen at your own discretion.
So, like I said towards the end of last week's episode, Alex Murdaugh had found his wife and son shot to death out by his dog kennels. And during the investigation of that, information was found that reopened the investigation into the supposed hit and run death of Stephen Smith. Now, like I said too, when I give that little recap, we don't know what that information was that they found, but it had to be something that maybe, just maybe, linked the Merdaughs somehow to the death of Stephen Smith. Well, 8 days after Paul and Maggie were found shot to death, Alex and his remaining son, Buster, they announced that they were offering a $100,000 reward for information that would lead to the arrest and conviction of whoever was responsible for the deaths of Maggie and Paul. Well, SLED established a tip line for receiving tips and information on their deaths. But to be eligible to receive that award, you couldn't be a member of law enforcement, and you had to either submit your tip either to the SLED hotline or tip line, or by calling the Crime Stoppers by the end of September of 2021. I don't think I've ever heard of an expiration date on submitting tips to get a reward, but anyway, this, as you can tell, is not your cookie cutter crime. I mean, it's been twists and turns, plot twist after another, so who knows? But not a whole lot happened big through that summer. But then in September, when September rolled around, it was announced on the 3rd that Alex had resigned from the family law firm. And that family law firm goes by the initials PMPED. But did he really resign? Multiple news outlets and even a couple of documentaries that I've watched give us reason to believe that he didn't resign, but he was forced maybe to resign from the family law firm after it was found out that he had embezzled money from the company and that he had scammed clients out of money as well. But whether he was actually, forced to quit or if he just quit on his own, this wouldn't end the Murdaugh drama.
Hampton County 911, where's your emergency?
On Salkehatchie Road.
Okay, what's the address on Salkehatchie Road?
I'm by the church.
What church? What church are you talking about?
I don't know the name of it with the red roof.
Okay, what end of Salkehatchie Road? Because I don't know what you're talking about.
At the Hampton County side.
Okay, what's going on?
I got a flat tire,
Mm-hmm.
and I stopped, and somebody stopped to help me, and when I turned my back, they tried to shoot me.
Oh, okay. Were you shot?
Yes, but
Okay.
I mean, I'm okay.
You shot where? Where were you shot at?
Huh?
Did they actually shoot you or they tried to shoot you?
They shot me, but,
Okay, wait, you need EMS?
well, I mean, yes, I can't drive.
Okay.
I'm trouble seeing, and I'm bleeding a lot.
Where part of your body?
I'm not sure. Somewhere on my head.
Your head?
Somewhere on my head. Somebody just stopped for me, ma'am. For 911.
Okay. Still?
Hey.
Okay, let me speak to him, see if he can tell me exactly where you are.
Where? Salkehatchie Road. That church? Okay. Red roof. Yeah, hurry, please.
Okay, and what's your name? I'm still here. I'm still on the line with you. What's your name?
Alex Murdaugh.
Alex Murdaugh?
Yes, ma'am.
And you see you were driving, you got a flat tire, somebody stopped to help you and they shot you?
Well, they pulled over, yes, ma'am, like they were going to help me.
Okay, stay on the line with me. We're going to get some.
I'm bleeding pretty bad.
Okay. Stay on.
St. John's Missionary Church.
St. John Missionary Church?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And can you give me a description of the person that shot you or shot at you?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, it was a white fella. I'd say
A white male?
A fair amount younger than me. Really, really short hair. You have an ambulance coming, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Stay on the line. I got them on the way.
You think one of y'all can drive me to the hospital? Yes, sir. You want to get the truck though, because I got a baby and he's doing that. One of y'all could get in this car and drive me? Yes, sir. They're going to drive me to the hospital. Ma'am? Ma'am?
I'm still here, sir. They're on the way. Don't hang up.
Now, what you just heard was part of a 911 call that Alex Murdaugh placed on the morning after he announced that he had resigned from his family's law firm. Some of his audio is a little hard to hear, but it's clear that at first he said his supposed assailant had tried to shoot him, but then he changed it to say that he had been shot. Now, it could be that because he was truly shot, maybe he wasn't thinking clearly, or maybe it was a slip of the tongue that he didn't mean to make. But so the story goes that he was changing a flat tire on a road in Hampton County when a stranger pulled up to help him change the flat tire. But when he turned his back on the stranger, they shot him. And apparently the stranger, according to Murdaugh at that time, had gotten away. Now, hospital records that were obtained by the Daily Beast showed that Murdaugh suffered from, quote, 2 superficial appearing bullet wounds to the posterior scalp, a skull fracture, and brain bleeding. And when he arrived at the ER, he had also complained of having an excruciating headache, and I imagine you would, and he had temporarily lost some vision. And get this, y'all, he had opioids and barbiturates in his system. And 2 days, or after 2 days of being in the hospital, including being in ICU, he was released from the hospital. The hospital's findings did shed a little bit of light on just how severe those injuries were, and even dispelled that the injury was self-inflicted. But what it didn't show, or even give a clue into, was who had pulled the trigger of a .38 revolver that day. So now Alex is out of the hospital recuperating, and maybe his conscience starts eating at him. Maybe. Or maybe it's just that the authorities are telling him that they're not buying his story. But whatever caused it, 9 days after the shooting, he confesses that he had orchestrated the entire thing in an attempt to get a $10 million payout for his one remaining son, Buster. And according to Alex, he had enlisted the help of his drug dealer, a man named Curtis Edward Smith. And he says that it was Smith that shot him in the head. Now, Murdaugh and Smith were charged with a ton of charges. And I mean a ton. And it ranged in charges from, including, it was like assisted suicide and insurance fraud. There's a bunch of other charges that went with it. But now, Curtis Edward Smith, he has a whole different story about what had happened. And he says he was set up to be the fall guy in all of this. Smith has said that even like in these televised interviews he's been in, he said that he refused to shoot him, and he doesn't believe that Murdaugh was shot at all. I mean, he was clearly shot somehow. But anyway, he went on to say that if he had actually shot at Murdaugh, he would be dead. And he admits that he did meet up with Alex on that Hampton County road on September the 4th. And when he arrived, he was holding the gun up. That is, Alex was holding the gun up. Now, remember how I just said he didn't believe that Alex was even shot? Well, in this story of events, he said that after he told Alex that he would not shoot him, he tried grabbing the gun away from him, and in the process of that, the gun accidentally went off. And in another interview, he said that he was 1,000% sure that the gun didn't hit either of them. Now, it just makes me, y'all, I hate to give my opinions on stuff, but you know I got to. Kind of makes me think this dude's tripping a little bit, because it was clear that Alex had actually been injured according to the hospital records. And Sled is not talking a whole lot about this whole thing, but according to an arrest affidavit, Murdaugh was, quote, supplied Mr. Smith with a firearm and directed Mr. Smith to shoot him in the head. The affidavit also mentioned that Murdaugh did confess to the scheme, naming Smith as the shooter, and that prompted Smith to confess that he had gotten rid of the weapon that was used in that shooting. Smith denied being Murdaugh's drug dealer, but he was also charged with the distribution of methamphetamine and possession of marijuana. Now, Smith also appears to be a bit offended that he was only known as Murdaugh's drug dealer. And to hear him tell it on a couple of the recent different TV shows that I've watched about this, he and Alex were like brothers. And they had been like brothers for a really long time, according to Mr. Smith. And maybe that's just his low-key way of making an appeal to like any potential jurors that were watching. I don't know that I should, like I said, give my opinion, but I will. And I just don't feel like those two guys were ever like brothers. But like I said, that's just my opinion. Now, Murdaugh's attorney, Dick Harpootlian, he tells a different story, though. According to Harpootlian, Smith met Murdaugh on the side of the road. Murdaugh told him that it would look like he had broken down, and he wanted Smith to ride by and shoot him, and that's what he did. Now, the bullet didn't penetrate Murdaugh's skull, though. Hospital records show that when Murdaugh arrived at the hospital, he was sitting in a semi-upright position, and the bleeding had been controlled by some gauze that had been wrapped around his head. When he was admitted around 1:30 p.m. that day, the record says that he was suffering from critical life-threatening injuries. Well, soon after admitting that he had orchestrated the shooting so that his son, Buster, could collect that $10 million insurance policy, Alex checked himself into an Orlando, Florida rehab. And 6 weeks into that rehab stay, he was arrested on charges of stealing money from an insurance settlement that was meant for the sons of Murdaugh's longtime housekeeper and nanny, Gloria Satterfield. Authorities were told that Satterfield tripped over one of the dogs that belonged to the Murdaugh family and then passed away several weeks after she fell. Now, I'm about to play for you the 911 call that Maggie placed after Satterfield, had fallen.
911, where's your emergency?
4147 Moselle Road.
Okay, can you give me the address one more time, make sure I got it right?
Yes, 4147 Moselle Road.
Okay, what's going on out there?
I'm sorry?
What's going on out there?
My housekeeper has fallen and her head is bleeding. I cannot get her up.
Okay, you said she's fallen. She's bleeding from the head?
Yes.
Okay. How old is she?
I'm not sure, like 58 maybe.
Do you know if she fell from standing or not?
No. No.
Where'd she fall from?
She fell going up the steps, up the brick steps.
Okay, so she outside or inside?
Outside.
Okay. How many steps is there?
8.
Okay, is she on the ground or is she up near the
She's
top?
on the ground. She's on the ground. She's on the
Is
ground.
she conscious?
No, not really.
Is she awake at all?
Yeah.
Okay. Is she just not, like, responding appropriately, but she is awake?
Man, she's not responding.
Okay, I've already got them on the way. Me asking questions does not slow them down, man. Knowing if she's conscious is one of the things that the medic needs to know if she's responding
Not
at
really.
all to you.
No.
Okay, so she's not responsive at all.
Well, I mean, she's mumbling.
Okay, so she is somewhat conscious. Is she breathing okay?
Yes.
Is she bleeding from anywhere?
Yes, her head.
Okay, are you guys able to control the bleeding?
No.
Can you
I
put
haven't
a
even
clean
tried.
rag or anything on it?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, is she bleeding from, like, her face, the back of the head,
I've got
her
an
neck?
ambulance coming. Sir, my name what?
Where exactly is she bleeding from on her head?
I'm not sure. At the top of her head.
Okay.
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 Oh,
Can, what happened?
she just fell back down. Can I get off this phone so I can go down there?
Can I have your name and phone number? Or are you able to bring the phone down by her?
What?
Or are you on a cell phone where you can walk down there
I'm
and
on
talk?
a cell phone. No.
Okay, can you bring it with you so we can ask her some questions about what kind of pain she's having?
Hello?
Yeah, can you ask the patient what kind of pain she's having?
Ma'am, she can't talk.
Okay, do you know,
She's cracked her head and there's blood on the concrete and she's bleeding out of her left ear.
okay, she's bleeding out of her ear?
And out of her head. She's cracked her skull.
Okay. All right, the other lady said that she had tried to stand up and fell down again?
No, I was holding her up. And
Okay.
she told me to turn her loose and she was trying to use her arm, but then she fell back over.
Okay, do you guys know who she is?
Yeah, she works for us.
Okay, do you know if she's ever had a stroke or anything before?
Ma'am, can you stop asking me all these
I
questions?
already have them on the way. Me asking questions does not slow them down in any way. These are relevant questions that I have to ask for the ambulance. One of my questions is, has she ever had a stroke?
I don't believe she's ever had a stroke, not that I know
Okay. Okay, is she able to talk to you guys at all, or is she unconscious now?
She's not unconscious, she's just mumbling.
Okay.
I believe she's maybe hit her head and maybe has a concussion or something.
Okay.
Maybe.
Do you know what her name is?
Gloria Satterfield.
You said Sanderfield?
Ma'am?
You said Sanderfield?
Satterfield.
Satterfield. Okay, what's the house look like out there?
It's offset off the road.
Okay.
It's a big house, got a long driveway.
With a long driveway?
Yeah,
Is there a gate or anything down there that they're going to need to come through?
There's 2 big brick columns that have to come through.
Okay, but there's no, like, gate code or anything that they need?
No, ma'am. And tell them that they can look for a fellow on a 656 Ranger.
Okay.
Waiting on them in the road is green. You know what they probably know what the Ranger looks like.
Yeah. You said, like,
Fella's
green.
got on a black sweater,
Okay.
a hat, and pants.
Okay. All right.
All right.
If something changes with her, if she loses consciousness or anything like that, I need one of you guys to call me back right away, okay?
Okay, well, how long is it going to take? Because this take us...
That I don't know. I've had them on the way since Maggie first called me. They were toned right away.
Okay.
All right, but I think they're coming... Hang on 1 minute. Let me check. They're coming from somewhere on Belt Highway in Ruffin, okay? That's where their station is.
Thank you.
All right, but like I said, if something changes, call me back.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That was the call released by SLED on February the 2nd of 2018. Now, after a few weeks in the hospital, sadly, Miss Satterfield passed away due to her injuries. And at the funeral, Alex takes Mrs. Satterfield's sons to the side, and he's like, hey, listen, I've got a plan. I'm going to get y'all some money, take care of y'all. And to get the settlement, what he planned to do was to sue himself on behalf of the Satterfield family. Now, he at some point mentioned to them that they would receive $500,000, but the total amount that came from that settlement was somewhere around $4.3 million. But did the Satterfields ever see that money? No, not even a penny of it. An interesting note about this is that the Hampton County coroner was never called to investigate the death, and she requested that SLED investigate and find out why she was never called on to review this case, since it was considered an accidental death. And get this, y'all, no autopsy was performed after her death, and her death was marked natural on her death certificate. If that don't sound suspicious, I don't know what does. Well, not only was something suspicious about that, but investigators were soon feeling that something was off about the fallen death of Miss Satterfield. In June of this year, it was announced that there are plans to exhume her body. And SLED has gotten permission from the family of Miss Satterfield to have her exhumed, but at the moment, there just hasn't been a date set. Now, that was just back in June that they announced this, so I don't know how long it takes to get something scheduled like that, but hopefully we'll know something from that very soon. And of course, I'll update you when I do. But Miss Satterfield, she had been the Merdaughs' housekeeper and nanny for over 20 years, y'all. And whether they had any love for her, I have no doubt that she loved that family dearly. I mean, she had to, since she had worked with them for 20 years. She basically saw their kids grow up. And according to her obituary, she had just celebrated her 57th birthday, just 18 days before she died. And one thing that really stood out to me when I was looking at her obituary was in the listing of those who she has survived by, it stated, and those that she loved as her family, Alex and Maggie Murdaugh and their family. But y'all, now that family that she had loved and considered family is being investigated in her death. And about that money he scammed her sons out of, it appears that Alex Murdaugh pulled a few strings now to get a close friend of his to oversee the estate of Miss Satterfield. And from my understanding, the money was put into this bogus bank account that Alex himself was in control of. And like I said, the Satterfields never received a penny. Murdaugh collected on that. And apparently he was stiffing some of his other clients too through the family law firm. In November of 2021, more and more fraud cases were being brought to light. And he was slapped with 27 charges and indictments that included money laundering, breach of trust with fraudulent intent, and forgery. And the amount that he has been accused of laundering is nearly $5 million, y'all. One of his victims is a highway patrolman who had sought Murdaugh's help after he was injured in an on-the-job accident. In January of 2018, Lieutenant Tommy Moore was sitting in his patrol car during a rare snowstorm in the lower part of South Carolina. It's very rare that down around Charleston in that area gets any snow. It's really, really rare for any part of South Carolina to get snow, but especially that part of South Carolina. But as he was sitting there, a car slams into his patrol car. And basically it drove underneath Moore's patrol car, lifted it up, and slammed it back down. And in the process of all that, the driver's seat broke loose. And it threw Moore backwards, and it caused him a lot of excruciating pain. Well, for months, he was going to different doctors and he was being misdiagnosed. But basically, Lieutenant Moore was in fact walking around with a broken neck. And that's when he contacted PMPED, that's the family law firm of the Merdaughs, for some legal help. And Murdaugh assured him that money would come. So he had the surgery that he needed to have the neck problem corrected that he was having. And he ended up having a metal disc added at his C5 disc, and at the C6 and C7 they were fused together and a metal plate was added. And I know that was a lot to recover from. Well, eventually Moore did receive a $100,000 check, and he went straight to see Alex Murdaugh. Well, that was in January of 2020. Well, Murdaugh convinced Mr. Moore to sign over his insurance check to the family law firm. He told Moore that the money couldn't be dispersed until the lawsuit was over and done with. But instead of depositing the money into where it was supposed to be deposited to, he deposited into that bogus account that I mentioned earlier. And this bank account has been named in like several other lawsuits against Murdaugh. Moore's money supposedly stayed in that account for over 3 years, and in the meantime, Moore's financial status is bad. I mean, he's got no money coming in. His medical bills are starting to pile up. And then all of a sudden, he gets a call from PMPED, and they're telling him that the check he had signed over to the law firm had been taken, and that they were in the process of replacing that money. And it wouldn't be until January of this year, 2022, that some of that money would be replaced. And get this, he didn't even get the full amount, because after all Murdaugh had put him through, that law firm still charged him attorney fees. He did receive a check for $38,000, and another $37,000 is being held until a workers' comp case is resolved. That's just unbelievable. But anyway, that brings us up to this year. But we're not going to go into any more of that until next week, because, like I said, there's so much to this, and I don't want to skip anything or cut it down for Tom's sake or anything. But yeah, I had originally planned on it being just a 2-part series, but there's just, like I said, so much to this case or cases that is going to be at least 3 parts, and I'll be bringing y'all that 3rd part on next Monday. Well, thanks for listening tonight, y'all, and I hope you have an awesome week in this first week of August. And don't forget to come back on Friday night for What the Friday.